They say when a marriage dies, it doesn't go quietly. But mine did. It died with a smile, a cheer from 70,000 strangers, and a 5-second clip that changed my life forever. The day everything collapsed started with love. 30 years of marriage behind us. 2 grown kids, a mortgage paid off, weekly bridge nights, Sunday omelets, and years of shared silence, sometimes warm, sometimes heavy. For her 57th birthday, I bought us 2 Coldplay tickets. Not just any tickets, 5 passes, front row, the works. Coldplay was her everything. She played them when she cooked, when she folded laundry. She cried every time she heard Fix You. She used to say Chris Martin's voice was what heaven must sound like. I hadn't seen her smile like she did when she opened that envelope in years. "You remembered," she said, her hands trembling. "I remember everything," I replied, and I meant it. For a while, it felt like it brought us closer again. She started humming in the mornings, wore makeup again. We laughed more. Something was thawing. But 2 weeks before the concert, I got a call that would ruin it all. A subcontractor at work had misfiled permits. The city was threatening to fine us. A project was in jeopardy. I was the only one who could fix it. I can't go," I told her that night, heart heavy. "But we'll go together to the Chicago show in 2 months. I'll buy new tickets." She looked up slowly, quiet. "It's okay," she said after a pause. "I'll go." "You sure?" "Yeah, I'll take someone." That should have been my first red flag. But 30 years of marriage dulls your radar. The night of the show, she left our house in a black blazer, her favorite perfume, and gold earrings I gave her for our 25th. She looked stunning, confident, vibrant in a way I hadn't seen in years. "I love you," I said as she stepped out. She didn't say it back, just smiled. I went to bed early that night, telling myself I was too old for late concerts anyway, but I couldn't sleep. Something felt off. I checked her location on my phone out of idle habit. It was disabled. Karen never disabled her location. Still, I brushed it off and told myself it was a glitch. I watched an old movie, poured myself a glass of scotch, and drifted into a restless sleep sometime around midnight. By morning, my phone was buzzing. Missed calls, group texts, notifications, and then one message from our daughter. "Dad, please call me. You need to see this." Attached was a link to a Reddit thread titled "Coldplay Kiss. Cam catches what looks like a cheating couple." Confused, I clicked, and there she was, Karen. Not just on camera, but on the stadium's jumbotron, sitting beside a man in a navy suit. He looked familiar somehow, older, distinguished, silver-haired. The camera zoomed in. The audience screamed with excitement. The kiss cam hovered for a moment. He pulled away awkwardly, and Karen laughed, too loud, too fake, then covered her face like a child caught stealing candy. That moment, that 5-second clip, that stadium cheer turned hush. It became the most watched video on the internet in less than 12 hours. I watched it again and again. I started reading the comments. LOL, she looks guilty AF. This gives office affair energy. dude looks like Ed Bicon from Astronomen? Tell me this woman isn't married, dare you. Her husband's gonna find out and die. She touched his arm like she's done that before. Then I saw a side angle someone else had posted. Karen laughing softly. Her hand gently rested on the man's knee. Familiar, intimate. My stomach turned. Who was that man? Why did his name, Ed Bicon, sound familiar? I opened her work site, Astronomen, a tech company she joined 2 years ago. She always said she worked in people ops, nothing flashy. I scrolled through the executive page, and there he was, Ed Bicon, founder and CEO. He wasn't just a co-worker, he was her boss. I just sat there, frozen, laptop open, coffee cool, watching strangers online dissect the woman I had loved for 30 years. And they were right. She touched him like she belonged to him. She smiled like she hadn't smiled with me in years. I checked the timestamp on the video. It was exactly 8:47 p.m. At that moment, I was watching reruns of baseball in an empty living room while my wife leaned into another man during her anniversary gift. Anniversary. I suddenly remembered the inscription I had engraved on the concert tickets to 30 more years of music and love. What a fool. She came home the next morning claiming she stayed at her friend Melanie's to avoid late-night traffic. I was waiting at the kitchen table. I didn't say a word. I just slid my phone across the table. Her eyes dropped the moment she saw the paused video frame. Karen went pale. Her hand trembled. I can't explain, she whispered. I didn't want an explanation, but I listened. And what she said next ripped something in me that had never broken before. It didn't start with him, she began. Not really. It started with how lonely I felt. She looked up. Tears gathered in her eyes but didn't fall. You used to hold my hand at the grocery store. Kiss me on the forehead when you brought me coffee. You used to look at me like I was the best part of your day, and one day you stopped. Her words hit me like a slow-moving bullet. Not because they weren't true, but because they were. I started staying late at the office, not because of him, just because it was easier than being home and feeling invisible. I wanted to scream, to yell, to cry, but all I did was stare. He started walking me to my car. Then we had coffee, then dinner. It didn't feel like cheating at first. It felt like breathing. Then she looked straight at me. I never stopped loving you, but I stopped feeling seen by you, and that man saw me. I sat in silence, staring at a woman I no longer recognized. Was she always this capable of betrayal? Or had I pushed her there, slowly, unintentionally, over time? I opened my mouth to speak, but I didn't know what to say. You humiliated me, I finally said. Not just in front of our kids, not just in front of my family. You did it in front of the whole goddamn country. She flinched. I didn't mean for it to happen like that, she said. We didn't know about the camera. I never wanted this to go public. You didn't want to be caught. She didn't deny it. I stood. My chest ached in a way I couldn't describe, like something sacred had just been quietly buried. I need air, I said. I left the house, drove aimlessly for hours, past the park where we took the kids, past the lake where we said I love you for the first time, past the church, where we stood in front of 200 people and swore forever. And the only word echoing in my head was, why? Not why she cheated, but why she didn't just leave before she burned everything down. That night, I slept in my truck. When I came back in the morning, her suitcase was in the hallway. She looked at me, defeated. Her eyes were red, her face blotchy. "I'm going to Melanie's for a few days," she said. I didn't argue. She walked past me without a hug, without a kiss, without an apology. And just like that, 30 years of marriage turned into a viral headline, a punchline, a memory. I didn't plan to spy on her, but what do you do when the person you trust most turns out to be a stranger? You start paying attention, closely. I stayed in the house after she left. She packed light, just one suitcase and her laptop, said she'd be at Melanie's for a while. She didn't say when she'd be back, didn't ask if I wanted her back, and I didn't stop her. For the first few days, I moved like a ghost. I made coffee. I stared out the window. I tried not to watch the video again, but I always did every night. It wasn't just betrayal. It was the ease of it, the comfort in her smile, the way she leaned in toward him, how her fingers lingered on his wrist like they'd done it 100 times before. And the worst part, the comments kept piling up. "So that's why she looks 10 years younger than her husband. She's got main character energy. He's just background noise. This screams long-term affair. Bet her husband has no clue." They didn't know me, but they were right, and I wasn't going to stay clueless anymore. I started with what I knew. Ed Bicon, CEO of Astronoman, public figure, interviews, speeches, company blog posts. He had the charm of a man used to being listened to and obeyed. Clean image, predictable branding, LinkedIn full of curated endorsements, a polished suit wrapped around a polished lie. And yet, I found cracks. It started with a video, an old one, a tech panel from 3 years ago. There was Ed on stage, and to his right, Karen. Not Karen from HR, like she used to call herself. She was introduced as VP of Strategic Development. BP, she never told me she had been promoted. The more I looked, the more I saw. She wasn't just some mid-tier operations manager. She had been part of Ed's inner circle at off-site retreats, in leadership conferences, dinner events, award ceremonies. Their proximity was everywhere, and I had never noticed. I called an old friend, Alan, a former cybersecurity consultant. We used to fish together. He owed me a favor. "I need a background check," I said. "On who?" "Ed Bicon and my wife." Alan was quiet for a second. Then, "What are you looking for?" "Patterns," I said. "Something that doesn't belong." Alan got back to me 2 days later. "Tom," he said, "you're not going to like this." "What did you find?" "You sure you want to know?" I didn't hesitate. "Tell me everything." Karen and Ed had a history longer than I thought. They worked together before Astronoman at a small analytics firm in Seattle. Karen joined 6 months after Ed was promoted to Viv Data. That was over 15 years ago. According to company records, she was listed on 3 confidential internal projects. One of them, coded Voltus, was locked down so tight Alan had to mask his IP just to view the metadata. Whatever that was, it was hush-hush, Alan said. Black budget, NDA-laced, government-adjacent kind of hush-hush. Karen never told me about Voltus. Hell, she never told me she worked in Seattle. I stared at the documents Alan sent. Employee badges, photos from a company retreat, her and Ed standing side by side, smiling in front of a cabin, snow, a fire pit, wine glasses. She looked younger, yes, but the look in her eyes was the same one I saw on the stadium screen. Comfort, trust, something deeper than the friendship. Her name was Lindsay, former Astronomen employee, worked in internal comms. I found her profile on LinkedIn, then followed a trail through alumni networks and private Slack threads until I found her personal blog. It was titled, "The Startup That Ate My Soul." Sounded promising. I sent her a message. She agreed to meet, said she had thoughts. We met at a coffee shop near the downtown library. Lindsay was in her 30s, sharp, with the drained look of someone who once burned out under fluorescent lights and learned to hate corporate optimism. "You're Karen's husband?" she asked, sipping oat milk latte. "Ex-husband, almost," I said. "Soon, probably." She raised an eyebrow. "You know about Ed?" I nodded. She leaned in. "You don't know the half of it." Then she told me everything. According to Lindsay, Ed and Karen had been inseparable from the start. Not just physically, but strategically. Ed trusted her more than anyone else. She handled internal investigations, managed exits quietly, smoothed over legal problems. She was the firewall. She protected him, Lindsay said, and in return, he gave her everything: visibility, promotions, a seat at the real table. But were they? I hesitated. Together? Lindsay snorted. Let's just say no one ever dared to ask. But the tension? It was thick. And the way she'd show up late to meetings wearing his conference lanyard? Not subtle. I felt sick. Lindsay took another sip. You weren't just married to her. You were her cover, her normal life insurance policy. My chest tightened. She used me? I asked. She loved you. I'm sure she did, Lindsay replied. But that doesn't mean you weren't also useful. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her voice echoed in my head. Lindsay's words, you were her cover. I thought back on birthdays, anniversaries, nights when Karen came home late, claiming the team was slammed or Ed made us stay after for a client crisis. I used to believe her. Now I saw it all differently. That laughter she brought home, it wasn't for me. That tiredness in her eyes, maybe it wasn't from work. Maybe it was guilt, or worse, none at all. I knew I needed to see it for myself. So I followed him. It was surprisingly easy. Ed Bicon drove a navy blue BMW Series. The license plate was registered to a holding company, but I recognized the car from paparazzi photos after the concert fallout. He still went to the Astronomen offices, quietly, early morning and late night, always avoiding main entrances. On Thursday, just after 7 p.m., he pulled into a reserved parking spot beneath a boutique hotel across town. I waited 2 blocks away in my old pickup. 15 minutes later, a black SUV arrived. Karen stepped out. Not in sweats, not in casual weekend clothes, but in a fitted dress I'd never seen before. She walked straight through the back door, like she'd done it before. I parked and walked, entered the lobby, pretended to check in, then moved to the mezzanine above the lounge, and I saw them, sitting in a corner booth, dim lighting, wine glasses, no documents, no laptops, no strategy session, just hands. Hers brushed his wrist as she reached for her drink. He leaned in when he spoke. They weren't talking business. They were talking intimacy. And I felt something in me crack. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that she was happy. I don't remember deciding to stand up. My body moved before my mind caught up. I walked slowly down the stairs, through the lounge, toward their table. Karen saw me first. Her face changed instantly, from relaxed to white as paper. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Ed turned next. He didn't flinch. Just looked at me with quiet calculation, like a man who's been caught before and survived it. "Well," I said, "this is cozy." Karen opened her mouth. "Tom, don't," I said. "Not here. Not now." The room grew quieter. The server, who had been passing by, froze. I looked at Ed. "You built your empire off data, right? Predictive behavior, AI models?" He nodded cautiously. "Did any of your systems predict this?" I asked. "Me, right here. Watching you screw my wife over wine and lies?" He blinked. Karen whispered, "Let's talk outside." "No," I said sharply. "This isn't your conference room. You don't get to set the terms anymore." Then to Ed, "I hope she was worth it, because I'm going to destroy everything you built, publicly, one press leak at a time." He narrowed his eyes. "You think I'm afraid of you?" "No," I said, "but you should be afraid of what comes next." I walked out of that hotel slower than I wanted to. My legs felt like lead, my hands shook, my vision blurred. I don't remember the drive home. I remember gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. I remember nearly running a red light. I remember silence, heavy, nauseating silence. The next morning, I made a decision not to scream, not to chase, to document everything. I called a lawyer, not about a divorce lawyer, at least not yet. I wanted someone who knew corporate behavior, someone who understood HR policy violations, ethics codes, and NDAs. Because Ed Bicon and Karen Caro, those weren't just cheaters. They were executive-level employees involved in an undisclosed personal relationship inside a private company that handled sensitive employee data. She was head of people. He was CEO, and no one disclosed anything. That's not just immoral. That's illegal. The lawyer listened quietly, then asked, "Do you want revenge or results?" "Both," I said. He nodded. "We gathered everything. Public records, emails Karen had forwarded home from her work account, dates she told me she was working late that aligned with Astronom's internal board events. There were patterns, confirmable meetings, photos, conference rosters. The Kiss Cam video was just the beginning. I didn't leak it myself, but I knew someone who would. A local business journalist I used to play tennis with. We hadn't spoken in years, but when I sent him the materials, I didn't even have to follow up. He called me 26 minutes later. "You're sitting on a bomb," he said. "Are you sure you want to do this?" "Yes," I said, "but I want my name out of it." The article went live. 3 days later, exclusive, Astronomin CEO and HR chief. allegedly involved in undisclosed relationship. Sources claim retaliation and ethics violations. It spread like wildfire. Within hours, Astronoman was trending on Twitter. Investors demanded a review. Their board issued a press release saying a third-party investigation has been initiated. Karen's name was everywhere, and mine nowhere, just as planned. She called me the next day. I didn't answer. She texted me, "You've ruined me." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied, "You did that yourself. I just turned on the light." The silence after the storm is always the loudest. The emails stopped. The headlines faded. Astronoman appointed, and interim C. Karen stepped down, though the internal memo said she resigned voluntarily. I heard she was escorted out by security. That part made me feel nothing. Not triumph, not relief, just nothing. The house felt emptier than it had during our separation. At least when she was gone before, there was noise, news clips, texts, lawyers, tension. Now it was just stillness. People asked me if I felt vindicated. "Did you win?" a neighbor said once. "You really took them both down." But this wasn't a victory. This was a graveyard. I filed for divorce officially 2 weeks later. She didn't contest it. There was no money fight, no screaming, no final dinner. Just signatures. My lawyer asked if I wanted to pursue civil claims for reputational damage, public humiliation, emotional harm. I declined. I didn't want more of her. I wanted doubt. Then, a month later, a letter arrived. It was in her handwriting, inside, a single folded page. "You once told me that trust isn't about perfection. It's about showing up." I didn't show up. Not for you. Not for us. What we had was real, but I wasn't. I'm sorry for all the versions of myself I made you love. I hope one day you remember me not for what I did, but for what we had before it broke. I didn't cry, but I read it 3 times. Then I burned it. Somewhere along the line, I stopped checking her socials. I stopped looking up press mentions. I stopped wondering if Ed still had his job, if she moved away, if anyone apologized. It didn't matter. I sold the house, moved north, a cabin by a lake, quiet, no Wi-Fi, the kind of place where cell reception disappears and the only time is sunrise and dinner. For a while, I didn't speak to anyone but the guy who delivered firewood and the woman at the local store who always asked if I wanted paper or plastic, even when I didn't buy much. And slowly, the ache dulled, not healed, but dulled. A year passed. Then one afternoon, I got a call from my daughter. She'd seen a photo, her mother, in a different city, alone, no ring. "Do you want me to send it to you?" she asked. I paused. "No," I said. "If she wanted to be seen, she'd look for me." She was silent for a while. Then she said, "You're not bitter anymore?" "I'm tired," I said, "tired and free. Some people survive betrayal by building walls. I built windows. I let the pain in, then let it go. I will never forget what she did. I will never justify it. I will never pretend it didn't happen. But I also won't carry it like a badge. It's just part of my story now, the chapter before the new one, the one I write for myself.